Hello, hello. Here's Augie again. We are here with the Paranormal Show under the umbrella of Broadcast Team Alpha. And we are going to do something really interesting tonight. I have a guest with me that's got a story. You got to hear all the way to the end because there are pearls in here that will enlighten you to our lives, to our world and the cosmos, and who lives in it elsewhere outside of this ball of mud called Earth. Because there is a lot, space is full of life, and we're going to talk about that. I for Broadcast Team Alpha now, we are transmitting on some 40 some different platforms, and we are also connected up with the Conscious Awakening Network, where you find us on just about everywhere out there. And we are at broadcastteamalpha.com. You can get in touch with us if you want to talk to myself and Nori. And also you can find us on YouTube and, of course, all the other platforms. If you are listening to YouTube right now, then go ahead, just subscribe. It will be wonderful to see that you did. And also, if you are listening on any other platform, just like us, but see if you can come back to YouTube, because that's where we monitor the chat room and you can participate in the show by asking questions and you know, your opinions are wonderful because we consider that for other shows and stuff. We have also created a spiritual think tank where we do some incredible things. There, we bend the laws of physics once in a while, and it seems like almost like we're creating things from seemingly nothing. But we reach into the quantum existence, find a match for what we want, and pull it into the physical with us. And especially when it comes to healings and abundance and other things that we may want to see happen. And I'm not going to try to talk too much here because I have a guest with me that you really want to listen to. I have Brett Sheppard, and Brett has a long time extraterrestrial contact history. He went through a lot of childhood trauma and an early ET abduction by very friendly and helpful ETs helped him through his trauma. And he started early, really early, to study the esoteric sciences and the knowledge. He also had a time anomaly that he may want to get into. It's a little bit outside of the box, but I understand what he's talking about because I live outside the box, so I can see how that works. And later he also started to study NASA prints and anomalies for what he found, and both on the moon and Mars. And to know more, you got to look at his books. You got to read those because one of them is "Are We Alone?" And that term, "Are we alone in the universe?" becomes a total joke if you read his books, because there is ample evidence that we are not, and they are walking down the streets with us sometimes, and we would never know it. And another book, there's a Russian name here, Tsiolkovsky Crater. It's about NASA and a whistleblower that is talking about what is actually on the moon. And Brett also formed the Lunar Anomaly Research Society. And you'll go to Facebook and you can see a lot of the pictures and stuff that they have come up with. And there's some incredible information there. And that is what NASA is covering up. And it's getting to the point anymore, they just can't cover it up because there's too much of it. So without me talking anymore, we want to hear from Brett. Welcome to the show, Brett.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be on here with you.
Yeah.
Um, oh my
Uh,
gosh, where to
I
start, right?
yeah, before we even get into much, I want to say something. You know, I don't really understand why people are running around and asking for disclosure.
Mhm.
It has already been done by the government, by NASA, by the Russian Space Agency, by the Russian Navy, and by the Russian president himself on live TV in Russia. One of them is, I'm going to read this because it's got to be said right. I have a quote here. There was disclosure was actually done several years ago by Medvedev and also by Joseph F. Bloomridge, a leading engineer at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. He studied the anomalies of what's going on the moon, the movement, the lights that is moving around. There are clouds up there, and there are explosions on the ground. There is buildings, structures. He studied that for 18 months, and he came out with a statement. He said the moon and Earth are and have been visited on a regular basis by extraterrestrial beings. Now, that is powerful coming from NASA, but nobody talks about it. So
Mhm.
I want to just, that statement alone is going to support what you're going to hear in this hour from Brett. What do you
Well,
think?
thank you.
Think about that one.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. And absolutely, we have been visited as long as Earth has been here, as from what I know, you
Yeah.
know. And yes, our government had our governments, have had a certain socioeconomic agenda, certain religious agendas, to keep the structure intact. And the way it was explained to me by a CIA agent at one of my conferences, uh, he came up to me and said, "We have families too, and we have to support our families." So it is about socioeconomics. It is about that, particular agenda to keep that a mystery. Um, what was interesting is the last time they met in Congress and during a disclosure, so to speak, um, one of the guys said that the ETs were a threat because of their technology and capabilities, etc. But it's only a vague threat because they've always had that technology. And before that, um, Dr. Thornton Page also gave an interview and said that they were not a threat because if they were, they would have already taken care of us.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be clicking off our nuclear capabilities. The ETs have been spotted all around nuclear plants and nuclear facilities and where there's rockets or whatever, and they've been disabling them. So this whole idea of there could be a nuclear war is actual fiction because all of those things have been disabled by extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah,
Um,
there's another one too that for the listeners out there can actually go and research on your own. It is simple to do. There
mhm,
is this NASA document, and it was classified for years. I think they had to release it after 20 years, so you can actually get it now. Go on the some don't try not to get Google because they are censoring a lot. At any other platform you can do research. Go and look up the document called Chronological Catalog of Lunar Events. That was compiled by NASA, and they have
mhm.
some 60 different anomalous happenings on the moon that was recorded all the way back to Halley. 300 years ago when they came up, well, not quite 300, when they came up with a telescope, he saw moving lights on the moon. He saw stuff happening up there. And it was recorded for hundreds of years. And that is listed in that document. You can read about what's going on the moon. So that is chronological catalog of lunar events. Just go look for that one, and you have an iPhone reading it. I'm sorry, I just had to say that.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and it's true. You know, that's a good thing to go look up. There's an amazing amount of material. It depends on how deep you want to go into that. The reason why I started the Lunar Anomaly Research Society is it was for more artistic reasons. Believe it or not, I wasn't looking for bases on the moon or aliens or any of that kind of thing, even though that's real as well. You know, what my interest was is when I was 15 years old, a lady from Stanford Research Institute came into my classroom, and her name was Amina Zarita, and she showed me pictures that were very odd. They were close-ups of moon images and Mars images, and she showed them to me like we show each other anomalies from Mars and on the moon. And she asked me what I see, and I saw naked ladies. I saw cartoon characters doing odd things. I saw different very psychosexual kind of things in these images. And I never forgot them, but 40 years later, I didn't know where they came from either at the time when I was 15. But 40 years later, I was looking at these lunar images, and I realized that I have a photographic memory because I can see that that is exactly what she showed me in the classroom. So when I zoomed in on some of these moon images, I saw the same things, the same images that she must have spent hours showing me in a classroom. And I don't know if this was a time problem or how they did that, because when I was let out, it was just the regular time. It wasn't dark out or anything. Regular time at school. So she showed me these all within an hour during a very displaced time period. So I saw hundreds of images, and I remember all of them. But 40 years later, I actually found them in the Mars images, in the moon images, and in the Hubble telescope images.
That's
so there,
subliminal advertising almost.
Yeah, it's, Hoagland, when he discovered the face on Mars and all of that, you mentioned Hoagland. A word was created just for Hoagland, and it was called pareidolia. But there are older words for that. There's hierophany, inspired by the divine, etc. That Da Vinci talked about way back when.
Yeah.
But these artistic anomalies are how they communicate with our world.
Yeah.
We see these in the clouds, in the trees, in a stain on the wall. We see this all the time, but we don't realize that is actually interdimensional communication. And it's it has a psychological effect. You'll actually dream about these images that you've seen in your ceiling, or in a pattern, or in a stain, or in the trees. You'll see this in your dreams, and it'll be real.
Yeah.
It'll be like real. So I was fascinated by that and how our brains work, with these things, because I wanted to communicate with them.
Yeah. And these psychological effects from these images that only your subconscious mind mostly will see, that makes you accept things. It makes you like things. It makes you drawn to it, and they do it on TV and advertisements and stuff, so that they will make you buy things that you probably don't even need or can't afford half the time. So So in those images, those may have been, I don't know, maybe, well, they obviously was placed there by someone, maybe for a purpose that we should accept them, the images as they are, and
Yeah.
like them more and not question things.
Yeah, I believe that's true. All of the images were created in space.
Mhm.
They weren't created on Earth. This was data that was collected in space, and a lot of the original material, anyway, when you're in court, you have to prove provenance, where something comes from.
Yeah.
Well, NASA can't do that because everything was destroyed in space. They only collected the data that came to Earth. You know, so there's a problem. All of these were digital. That's why I called my book Digital Moon, because it was about that.
Yeah.
Um, these images, there's a lot of room for extraterrestrial interference, and also, if you believe that there are dimensional gates in the sun, etc., because the sunlight, which is light, it goes through all dimensions. And it's a vehicle and a way for extraterrestrials to be able to communicate with us, through imagery. Um, every time you take a picture, even on Earth, of your loved one or your dog, you can see things in the image that you're not supposed to see, because society says you're not supposed to see that, you'll be crazy.
Yeah, and here's one too. To see things that you're not supposed to see. For those
Mhm.
listeners out there that is interested in seeing UFOs, there is a way
Right.
you can do that every time you go outside. And here's how. Get your hands on a fourth generation night vision goggles. Go out in daytime, you don't see anything. There's too much light. Go out at night, point it into the sky, and you will see ships flying back and forth, triangular ones, round ones, long ones, cigars, and just points of lights moving everywhere. There's a traffic jam up there. In
Yeah.
the higher light spectrum, slightly above what we can normally see with our eyes, because those fourth generation night vision goggles, they see higher up into the light spectrum than we do. So you will be able to see it. Try it.
Yeah,
And
that's wonderful.
yeah. Now, what do you think the actual moon is?
Well, there's been a lot of theories, but you're asking me.
Yeah.
You know, um, I believe that it was a part, of an explosion. I don't know if it was an old planet or something, but an explosion of a star or something like that creates our asteroid belt and other things. But I think it was a bigger chunk of asteroid belt material. And it's also, those planets, all the planets out there have the same, they have some unique properties, but mostly, Earth and the moon and all of the planets, they share the same substances, the same minerals, the same type of material.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's
so
additional things on the moon, though, like titanium.
yeah, I believe that the moon was later somewhat placed there. It was dragged from the asteroid belt, placed in our environment, and it's called the Lagrange points, where the electromagnetics hold it in place, so that it does, its normal cycle. But the moon doesn't rotate,
Mm-hmm.
as far as the POV from the Earth. It doesn't rotate. It stays that way, and the illusion is it rotates around the sun, not the Earth. So the Earth and the moon are rotating around the sun, and it's creates that illusion, but mostly it's just facing us
Yep.
all the time.
Yeah. And
It wibbles a little bit because it's sort of egg shaped. A lot of people don't know that. It's a little bit egg shaped. It's not completely round. And it's because of the gravitational pull, etc., and the electromagnetics that pull it. Um, so the backside of the moon, is a lot farther than people think. It's not like, oh, it's a round ball and you just go to the backside. The terminator, what we see as the terminator is sort of the sides of the egg. So when we look straight at an egg, it looks round.
yeah.
And of course, it's, going all the way back. And the the reason why there's a lot of bases on the far side of the moon is because it's a good study place where you could study the rest of, Mars, or especially during an occultation or something like that. It's also a platform to go to another place. So you have a lot of activity on the backside of the moon. Um, that I'm sorry to say, NASA hasn't shown that completely, but there's a lot of things going on. Ingo Swann, um, he was a psychic and also an artist, and he's sort of like me, almost the same kind of thing. But he could remote view. He was remote viewing the backside of the moon and saw big giant structures, that looked like giant cranes, etc. So they're still building, they're still doing that from the 60s. There are ET bases up there, and co-op bases, and there's some that are just our bases, but they not a big differentiation up there. It's sort of an intergalactic community.
Yes, and on the back side also there are NASA prints, that first-hand prints that show lights on the back, on the other side of the moon. When they flew around it and they took those pictures, it was dark on the back side, but they could see lights, straight lines, straight angle lights, kind of like a small city in one area. And nature don't do stuff like that. So, and then again in 1969, NASA just dumped the lunar, the orbiter, I guess. They dumped that on the moon, and it rang as a bell for several hours afterwards. It wouldn't do that. There was a big cavern inside.
Yeah, I believe it's porous and has caverns. It's almost hollow. It's like the Earth. Has a lot of structures, and it's porous like a sponge. Has a lot of different things going on like that. I don't want to discount anyone's research in the hollow moon or hollow Earth theory, or anything like that, but I think they're both right. I think you have a sort of porous cave-like exterior and maybe a hollow-ish center, but I think it's interdimensionally hollow, not physically hollow, something like that. So I think there's a lot of different alien structures that are inside the moon.
Yeah.
As well.
Now you have a personal experience with the moon. You talk a little bit about what you've seen there.
Well, when I was very young, I had an out of body experience during a trauma. They didn't want me to feel what was actually going on, and I really don't want to describe it. But they took me out of my body, and they took me into the moon like a dream. I thought it was a dream anyway. I was little, but it felt very real. It was the ship we were in was clear, so you couldn't see anything but stars and everything while we were traveling. It was very strange, and they said, you could just think of something if you want to sit, and you'll sit. So things were working differently in that dimension than they do normally. I'm really fighting that I have to write that as fiction because it to me is like a dream, but not, you know. And I don't want to say that it's total fiction because to me it was very real. It was an experience, you know. So anyway, when we got to the moon, these creatures or whatever, they were very small in stature, and they had faces like Karma Delate type clownish faces that covered their faces, and their faces looked humanish, you know, because they admire us so much. They think we're great. We're entertaining to them. We're fun. They love to watch us, our struggles and our happiness, and they love all of it. They love to see everything. The pain is even fun to them. Everything is different in their dimension, and it's like a mirror, you know. Um, but these creatures are very likable and very friendly, but very sad, you know, because they have in their own lives things are missing that we enjoy. We enjoy our senses, and they don't enjoy too much senses in their world. Um, Everything that they create is from the mind, from a thought form, you know. And so they just think of something and it's a creation process. And how sad it is for us that we forget that we do that we just create something from our thought, from our mind. And maybe it takes a long time. Maybe it's a butterfly effect, but eventually it comes together. It happens for humanity. And, you know, we go through a lot of struggles and a lot of weird things, and they try to be entertaining, but sometimes it just gets old, you know.
Yeah.
But we're on the right track. We're going toward um, a sort of an evolution, and it's not entirely technologically based or something like that, because you know real actual technology is closer to nature than it is some baubles that you create. We were given certain things that were part of their nature, the ET nature, transistors and things that made our computers work, Velcro, you know, just different weird ideas like that, but it changed our lives. Um, and since, you know, our government admitted that Roswell was real, all of that is real as well.
Yeah.
So these things are real. We got um, technology, and we reversed engineered some technology, but not probably very well. Um, but it's interesting that they're now coming out with these things. So that's disclosure, sure, but it ends with a thud because we already know that ETs exist and spaceships exist, extraterrestrial, from from the vast amount of not only experiences but evidence. We already know as human beings, as a culture, though we may laugh at it because it's not part of our consensus yet. It's very real.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to be a big surprise, and the truth is going to end with a thud. It's not going to be a big deal. We already know that that exists. What we are really concerned about to move ahead as a human race is our socioeconomic problems, our other sort of problems. We should all be prospering. There shouldn't be a thing called capitalism or communism or something where a few people control everybody else. You know, we should all be prospering in some way if we can find a way to do that, you know. Um, there are so many things that human beings are capable of, and the ETs know it, and they're waiting for us to take those steps. We started taking steps back during the space race and all of that, but we still needed their help to go to the moon. If people think that they went to the moon in that tin can, they are sadly mistaken. There are micrometeors and all kinds of things that would take effect, that would beat that thing into a pulp, you know, and make it implode. So the extraterrestrials, according to um, William Tompkins, um, he said that while he was working, for NASA, he was contracted out to do their radio signals and their television video stuff in space. And what he was watching on the monitor was different than what the public saw as far as the moon landings and all of that. What he was seeing was the extraterrestrial giant ships that were coming in and putting uh, a cloaking beam around the ship so that we wouldn't hurt ourselves. They actually cared about our lives, so they showed us the moon in that way. They took us to the moon in that little encapsulated beam of it's like a gravity beam or something to protect or shield, and slightly visible but not. So they took us to the moon, set us down on the moon and everything else, and they were able to walk around within that little area that was confined in that field, that shield or whatever. And he said that they saw giant ships lined up on the edge of the craters of these people that were on the moon, that were not from Earth, that were helping us. And he's got, if you're interested, he's written a book about extraterrestrials and his time with the Nordic women that were working with him at NASA, that were not from Earth. And I met one of those women. And I believe I did. Her name was Zino. She completely disappeared off the face of the earth past the 70s. But she taught me how to do artwork when I was 10 years old. And it wasn't just teaching me how the technology of doing the art, or, to draw better or to do shading or anything like that. I was already doing that kind of well myself, What she was saying was draw what you see. And she said that all the way back from the beginning. And this lady was like some kind of genius. She used to put together little micro pieces of puzzles that would cover a whole wall in her house within days. So there was something about her that wasn't quite what I would call less than or human-ish qualities. But these were very outside the box kind of qualities that she had. And she taught me a lot. And I'll never forget the subtle things that she had taught me that I didn't realize till later that they were actually significant. When I was looking at these moon images and these strange things, like cartoon. What's weird about what I'm seeing on the moon is that they're themed. So a whole lunar image is themed like it's all clowns and different types of aspects of clowns, and big ones and tall ones and giant ones, and just the most bizarre, way that you would think of clowns. But it also goes into the clown history, the Karma Delate and the Little Hercules and all of those aspects of clowns, from history. And you get into things like that, and you realize that, that transvestitism and is a type of clown. It goes all the way back. Men dressing on stage as women, like in Shakespeare plays, and all of that is part of the clowning thing. So there's that theme. And then it'll go into a theme that's all like old religions, like Hercules and Theseus and, all of the ancient Greek and before ancient Greek type of philosophies. So and the entire image will be graphically oriented and themed to that particular subject. So this is more than just looking at pareidolia and getting some kind of graphical information a little at a time. Or I think I see a dog, or I think I see a goat or a bull or something, which are all very, common things. Monkeys, especially, very common. Elephants are very common because they're archetypes. They're actually visual archetypes. So you see a lot of things like that, and the strange strangest ways. A lot of them are very funny.
Yeah.
But it paints a picture, and you see things that you wouldn't normally see. We think about like the Greek history, and you can go into Homer and the Iliad and all of that. Those are all really cool stories that lead into the Atlantean thing, which
Yeah.
Herodotus talked about. Never mentioned that Atlantis or something was in the Atlantic Ocean or something. That was a Plato idea. But Herodotus said that the Black Sea area was where their people came from, Scythia and the Black Sea, Caucasus Mountains, etc. So that was interesting to me that Atlantis could be part of the Black Sea. So I don't know. I'm going off on that
Yeah. Yeah. But
for a reason, by the way.
you mentioned
um,
about going to the moon, and I totally agree. They did not go to the moon by themselves in that tin can. It is theoretically impossible.
yeah, that's ridiculous.
The radiation outside of our uh, Earth magnetic field is so strong from the sun. They couldn't really, yeah, they could live out there for a little bit, but they would be damaged very, very soon in their genetics. Have you ever taken a spoon and put it in the microwave and turned the knob to the right? That thing just explodes in there. That is what would happen to that little tin can outside of our magnetic field.
Right. I don't believe that I don't even believe that our astronauts went on that trip that the extraterrestrials took.
Yeah.
I think it was special forces, naval intelligence, etc. I don't believe that they would trust
No,
rocket jockeys to go to the moon or to go out in space like that.
there is only one way they could do it, and that is
Mm-hmm.
if they were within a magnetic field that shielded them from the outside radiation. The,
Which they were. Yeah.
the Honebu would do that because it had that field around it. The Honebu,
Yes.
one I don't know about, probably, but the two and the three did. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, if there was another ship next to them that could encompass them, that could also help. But they did have some help if they were.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the way they were going to the moon all the way back in the Eisenhower era, way
Yeah.
before our moon landings or even before lunar orbiter. They were already there.
Mm-hmm.
So they were used to they knew and were used to the idea of the extraterrestrials helping them get there. They already knew that,
The
and there
Germans,
was a technology exchanges, etc.
the Nazi Germans were the first ones that went to the moon. And there
Hmm.
actually there is some writing about that in German, and they talk about having an expedition to the moon. And what they found up there was a building, I believe it is in the Schrodinger crater. The building
Hmm.
looked like it's an old dilapidated building, but it was built as a swastika. And the Germans came and they fell in love with that thing, so they started rebuilding part of it. And that's
Yeah, yeah. The ancient structure that was up there that you're talking about was actually built by ancient moonlings, people that were already on the moon a long time ago and had a civilization there. There is gazillions of old, decrepit walls and buildings, just like Earth, of civilizations of the past. And this symbol, didn't mean Nazis or anything like that. It was a sun symbol.
yeah.
Because it was clearly um, where the sun comes around in a particular light and etc.
Yeah. And
Um,
now that building, uh, Hitler did something to the swastika. He reversed it.
right.
And that was not a good thing. I bet if things could have turned out different, maybe if he kept it like there's something about the sacred geometry of that swastika.
Yeah. The
And
black
he reversed
sun,
it.
etc. Yeah.
I think he got the negative effect off of it. But I also, when I did the research for one of my books, I found that at one time there's writings coming out of India some 9,000 years ago saying there were two moons at one time. One of them was slightly bluer or blue, and the other one was the one that we have. And there also was a time before the moon. So it appears to me like the moon we are looking at night was flown in and parked in a perfect circle, which
Absolutely.
is impossible to get that. It would be one in billions in order for that to happen by accident. It had to be parked.
Yeah, that's an early, very natural technology.
Yeah.
Very natural. That's just where it belonged, basically. There's also on Earth, there's another moon that has an elliptical orbit that is our actual true moon from Earth. And it's named after a Gaelic tribe in, I believe, Scotland. What is Crutane? It's named Crutane. And that is our true, one of our true moons. That moon right there, it looks like a big asteroid.
I read about that. Yeah, it's a lot smaller, but it's also
very small.
Yeah, further out. But there is another one. That's I read about that.
There's another one, yeah, of course. But yeah, that's always fascinating to me. I love history. I love the ancient history and going beyond that, going beyond history and wondering what things were like, I've got a picture of an old ancient structure on the moon. It's an old wall. And it's in a very geometrical pattern. And the shot was taken by Apollo 12.
Where can people go and see those images that you have?
They can go on archive.org. There's some there. I have Ken Johnston's entire catalog of images that were actually printed in the 70s, or I'm sorry, in the 60s. And these are all lunar images and space images. They're under Dr. Ken Johnston or Ken Johnston.
Is that on YouTube or is it?
That is archive.org.
Oh, okay.
And it's on the internet. You can just Google archive.org Ken Johnston with a ST, Johnston.
Okay.
And you'll find his library of things on there that I put on there. He still has them in his house, all of these images. They're wonderful, and some of them are crystal clear. There were posi negatives of when they actually took pictures in their little space bubble up on the moon. They were taking pictures, and what was interesting, people say, well, it's impossible. You can't see stars or you can't see anything. You can in these images. There are things that are very noticeable that are the same sun angle as on the ground, etc. And there's things flying in these images. So they're really worth going to look at. They're wonderful. That's one of them. Hoagland actually, saw a lot of these images too early on, and he was studying them with a guy from the University of Arizona, and I don't want to say anything about that, but
yeah,
slightly misrepresented. I think they should have been looked at a little bit harder. I definitely looked at them very hard. I studied the pixels and everything of how they should be and how they're supposed to be on an Apollo 15 image as opposed to an Apollo 12 image. So I even studied the pixels of the different technologies or the different cameras. So you've got your Moyer camera and your Hasselblad and all that.
Yeah.
You also have a Nikon camera that was taking pictures up there. And a lot of people don't know that, but there's a lot of different types of cameras that were taken up there and used. Nikon comes to mind.
Yeah.
But Nikon, when you take a picture, the pixels are a little bit fuzzy anyway. They're very pixelated, it's kind of like that with that camera. So yeah, a lot of those pictures were taken with a Nikon.
Well,
It's fascinating.
there's an awful lot of pictures and NASA prints coming from the moon, and there's one of them. I've been digging around in the archives of NASA for a long time, and I have a lot of the prints. I mean, the first-hand prints that came right off of the however they took the pictures from the moon. But
Yeah.
one of them is a 2-mile long cigar-shaped ship floating across the surface of the moon, throwing a shadow on the ground. It's
I
very
remember that.
And in fact, if you go to broadcastteamalpha.com, go into picture gallery, you will find those pictures. And I'm sure that Ted Johnson has it too.
Yeah, he has those. One, that NASA's official story, or back then when they weren't telling the truth, is that was some kind of tether, and it was just a shadow from the tether of their ship that was floating by. If you remember that, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they NASA had put together all kinds of people to debunk everything, to all kinds of skeptics, etc. That formed an organization called spacecraft. Horrible organization. I don't even know how they could sleep at night. Literally, they lie so much about everything. But I had one of those skeptics on me all the time when I was studying the lunar images, and I'm not even going to mention his name. So you're welcome. I'm not going to even say his name.
Yeah.
But he was harassing me and Ken Johnston for a long time. And but he was right up there. He had studied under Class and all of the other old skeptics, Dr. Thornton Page, et cetera, So he had studied under all those people who were who were literally assigned to debunk certain things. So that's fun.
The moon has been misrepresented more than probably anything that NASA has ever done. And
Yes.
I have pictures, NASA prints of green vegetation in bottom of 2 craters.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at things like this, and you look at the structures, you look at the buildings. There's also a guy in Canada, Bruce Schwartz. I'm sure you know him. He has Bruce Sees All on YouTube, and he's got a telescope that is so big I can crawl inside of it. When he aimed that at the moon and just keep turning the knob, you see huge buildings, mile-long, square cornered buildings.
Oh, yeah.
And this is something that cannot be explained away. It is there, and we see it. So it's getting to the point where NASA now is just every time they open their mouth, you have to turn it around and believe exactly the opposite of what they're saying, and then you got it.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, they were 50 miles above the moon, and they were taking pictures. Why are they fuzzy? Yeah. When we're getting clearer pictures from a telescope from Earth. So, I keep telling skeptics that, and they keep saying, well, it's because of the type of camera they used, and they didn't really have the technology back then. They did. They absolutely did. They had the technology to take crystal clear pictures. Donna Hare showed me one of those images that were crystal clear that they took when they were, hopping around in Apollo 12 or whatever. And it was absolutely very clear. You could see everything in detail. So that's not true. What they did was they lowered the resolution. They put the f-stop to infinity to make everything fuzzy in the background, especially in the Hasselblad. All you have to do is take a picture of a shoe or something. The shoestrings that lead in the back or whatever are going to be fuzzy. The shoes up close would be crystal clear. So it depends. If you set your f-stop to infinity, that happens,
Yep.
with the Hasselblad in particular. But things are fuzzy in the background, and that's on purpose. They could have made that perfectly clear. And it just depends on where their focal point is and where they're aiming. But so the photography skepticism is nonsense. There are glimpses and ways to actually take pictures of stars with filters, etc. So that's nonsense as well.
Yeah.
And they used the best filters back then, to literally get pictures of what was in the lunar atmosphere. It was on purpose. They were studying asteroids and everything. They weren't just studying the moon, per se.
Yeah, and another thing too is that there is also on our website we have pictures of the horizon of the moon that show a little bit of an atmosphere. It's a colored atmosphere across it because the moon has an atmosphere. You can actually breathe up there. It is not as much as ours. It's more like maybe 16 to 20,000 feet of altitude here on Earth. And that's okay. We can live in that if we get used to it. But look at the people that live in the Himalayas. There are people living at 16,000 feet all their life, and they're fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then when you look at the moon, the green grass, the atmosphere, there's millions of people living up there. And I am saying that as a statement because so far I've been talking about what NASA has been doing, but there is another way to find out what there is up there, and that is to become an astral traveler. Go there and have a look. They may not like you being there, but get in, have a look, and get out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's they've opened that up a little bit for people that want to do that. They're not so stringent. They're not going to come after you and psychologically damage your brain or anything. We used to have sentinels like that would come in and stop you from even dreaming about that. We are allowed to do that. You can practice remote viewing. There's different study guides on that on the internet. It's very simple and it's accurate. It's not a mystical thing to do. Remote viewing is a natural human ability.
Yeah.
And there's no trick to it. If you want to project and sense something or see something off into a distance or something that's going on in another part of the world, all you have to do is use your imagination. There's a lot of science in that. And if you use your imagination, you're actually getting a lot of clues and a lot of downloads on exactly what's going on in that little area. And the longer you stay there, the more information you get. So you can do that with the moon as well, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
And you can astro travel, super conscious astro traveling, remote viewing. It's similar,
Somewhat similar, and it is not that hard to learn.
It is not. Yeah. So it just takes a little bit of practice and belief in it. Doesn't do much good if you're a skeptic and you say, well, this isn't going to work. I'll just, okay, fine. Cool. What do I do? Do I close my eyes? Do I meditate? Okay, I'll just lay down and I'll just think of the moon. Is that what you want me to do? That's probably not going to work with someone that's highly skeptical or someone that doesn't want to do it.
Absolutely.
And
another thing too, that once you get out of the body, it's a totally different environment. There is other entities out there. There's things out there. Try not to associate because they can attach themselves to you. So there is tricks to it that you got to know because you are in a totally different environment.
There are. You're in like a mirror world, and you're going to see things that don't make any sense to you until later.
But this
But
is
you know, that's
this is fun to talk about. Gosh, talk a little bit about what's in your book about the moon also.
well, a lot of the things that I've said are in my book, you know, in um, various forms. The story of how I got into looking at lunar images and that is in there. The the story of the lady that was showing me pictures from the future when I was 15 years old. That's in there. I talk about Ken Johnston a lot because at the time when I was writing the book, I was going around to conferences with Ken and mainly focusing on his work and what he's done in his life and that because there was a little bit of a um, we felt a little rush on that because he was older, you know, um, and and we wanted to get it all done, you know, so that he'd have a legacy and all.
Yeah.
But we have very much respect for that man. You know, he's had to say things during his career that weren't exactly. There's a lot of different the complexities with that. But I talked about that and some of those complexities. I also talked about how perception plays into all this. When we get light information through our eyes and how it crosses like a mirror
Yeah.
within our brains, you know, and it's actually stored, you know, in certain parts of our brain, depending on what it is, what the information is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of neat. A lot of people talk about trauma and how you're susceptible to having multiple personalities or people, evil people, you know, like Mengele or something, you know, being able to split your personality and create little boxes of different things only to come out with a keyword or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that is true. I don't know, but that's not how my brain works. If they definitely tried to do that when I was young,
Yeah.
but it didn't work because of the photographic memory problem.
Yeah.
I remember everything, you know.
There's one more thing that I really wanted to talk about, and I see we're running out of time, but maybe we
Mm-hmm.
could come back to that issue in a future show, and that is
Sure.
the lady over in the Czech Republic. She's become a fairly good friend of mine, Ilona Podraska. She is in
Ilona and
con-
Ivana. Yeah.
yeah, she's in contact with extraterrestrial beings, and they are dropping things out of the ceiling right on their table. There is a funnel that things are coming in, both audible messages on their speaker box, she call it,
Mm-hmm.
the speaker in the restaurant, even when the radio was turned off,
Mm-hmm.
the speaker works. And the
That
is
is a
talking to them.
portal. Yeah, that is a portal. And I was when I was helping them put their book together, you know, a while back. You can mention the name of that. It's got a long title, like all Czechoslovakian or Russian titles. It's long, you know.
Yeah.
But when I was putting their book together, I tried to explain to them, you know, that there are a lot of interdimensional aspects to this, and ghosts and extraterrestrials, etc. And this isn't very strange at all. But one of the strangest things I found about that research is that during the Vril Society in World War II, Maria Orsich, you know, in the general world area, was actually experiencing a lot of these phenomenons as well. The same thing. They also used sort of a Ouija type board or a message board, just like the girls did, Milona and Ivana, I believe, use a number board, letter board, a spirit board, or if you
Yeah.
will.
Ivana is,
There was also the guys from Gulf Breeze that were over in the army over there. They were communication experts, and they were using Ouija boards that they were trained to use from the United States at Fort Hood, I believe, or no, it was anyway, I'll remember it. But these guys went over there and they actually contacted extraterrestrial spirits, interdimensional spirits, through these message boards. So you have three instances in the same part of the world. Of course, there's a portal there.
Yeah.
Of course, there is. There's where there's a lot of messages coming through, physically and interdimensionally, psychologically, all of these different aspects, even graphically, are coming through. I don't know. I don't remember the girls talking too much about their own dreams, etc. But I'll bet they're interesting. But these girls have been in contact with the extraterrestrial Ebioli from Malaysia from way back, for quite the while now. Yeah, the years, and they write down more than I could possibly publish. But I got people started with their first book, But they write down more than I could possibly imagine to publish. It would be like an encyclopedia of volumes of things,
I tell you what, let's do another show on this. Can I get you to come back? And
I would love to talk about those too. Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you helped them put a book together, and let us know, where can people find those two books you're talking about?
Well, you can find them on Amazon.com. If you look under Czech Girls, E.T. Ebioli, I forget you. And there's Digital Moon, which is also on Amazon. You could Google that, by Brett Sheppard or Brett C. Sheppard. And if you want to read my book and you just want to read it online, it's on internetarchive.org. It's Digital Moon by Brett C. Sheppard, and you should land on a page with that. So that part of it's open source. You can read it online if you don't want a real book in your hand.
So you gotta have the real thing.
Gotta have the real thing. It's a cool book. Yeah. But if you just want to read it and get the idea of what I'm talking about, it's out there. You can read it for free. It's okay.
That sounds good. Let's get together off the air and we'll find another date, because folks, you need to hear what the Czech Republic girls are doing. There is message in there. There's science in there, and scientists finding that, yeah, be doggone, there's something to this science that these uneducated girls are coming up with from the message through the portal and the tunnel.
Yeah, I will help as much as I possibly can. They're having a language problem, getting the information out, especially to the English-speaking world, But Ilona is getting pretty good at putting the subtitles on their videos, etc. Yeah. But I think there's English-speaking people sort of lose interest if they don't understand the language, So yeah. I am perfectly happy to help get their information out any way I can. That'd be great.
All right, that sounds good. Well, we're just out of time, so let's do this again. And the next one's going to be extraterrestrial contact. So yeah, let's do that. And folks, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And subscribe if you're on YouTube. It will be then you can get a message when the next video and the show comes out. Don't miss that one. So yeah. Thank you very much, Brett.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.